Good evening, everyone, and welcome to June 17th, our Willow City Council special meeting. We will call this meeting to order at 5:31. Pledge of Allegiance. Councilmember Thomas.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Mayor Hudson,
Oh, present. Sound like you said Mayor Hanson. I was really confused.
oh, sorry. Yep. Mayor Thomas, I'm Vice Mayor Thomas,
Here.
Councilmember Hanson,
Here.
Councilmember Pride. Here. Councilmember Busby. Busby's absent.
Okay. Any changes to the agenda?
There are no changes.
Okay. And then we will ask for any public comment at this time before we go into closed session. Seeing none, we will go into closed session at 5:32.
Reopen and
Okay.
read it out. Sorry.
We're going to reopen out a closed session to read off our closed session items. 5A, conference with labor negotiators, and item 5B, public employee performance evaluation,
Library director.
library director. Now we will go into closed session at 5:33. Good evening, everyone. We are returning from closed session. I will pass it over to Andrew. First, I'd like to announce that Councilmember Matt Busby did arrive at 5:48 to join us in our closed session. City Attorney Andrew.
Thank you, Mayor. The report out from this evening's closed session. First item was a conference with labor negotiators pursuant to Government Code 54957.6. The agency designated representatives were Marty Brown, City Manager, and Andrew Platt, City Attorney. The employee organizations were the confidential employees, UPEC, fire and general bargaining units, as well as management. A report out direction was given to staff. The second closed session was a public employee performance evaluation pursuant to Government Code 54957. Title was Library Director, and direction was given to staff.
Thank you for that. Moving on, we'll go to item 6, public comment and consent calendar forum. We have item 6A, register approval, 6B, minutes approval, item 6C, mosquito vector control district board of trustees, biannual appointment, 6D, weed abatement contract implementation, 6E, fiscal year 2025-26 annual street rehabilitation program. All matters on the consent calendar are considered routine and may be approved with a single vote unless removed or separate discussion by council or city manager. Individuals wishing to make public comment on consent items or items not on the agenda are asked to complete a speaker card and submit it to the city clerk. All comments shall be directed to the mayor and city council, and you'll be limited to 3 minutes. With that, I will give it to the council's discretion.
Mr. Mayor, if when you're finished with public
Sorry,
comments.
is there any public comment? I apologize. Seeing none, I will give that to the discretion of the council.
Mr. Mayor, I'm not asking anything to be pulled. I just have a quick comment for item 6C when the time is appropriate. Thank you.
Yeah, you're good.
Very good. Very good. Yeah, in reference item 6C, Mosquito and Vector Control District Board of Trustees, biannual appointment with recommendation to reappoint Vince Holvig as the city's representative to that body, that board. I just wanted to state publicly and thank Vince for his service. Mr. Holvig served with honor and distinction for several terms in Willow City Council and has also served the Mosquito Abatement Board for a number of years. Yeah, I want to thank him for his service. He's a solid, good man and a true statesman. Just one of a kind. That's all I had to say. I'd like to thank Vince for everything he's done for us. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Perfect. Thank you. Any other comments or questions from the council?
Seconded.
A first and a second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passed. Next up, we have item 7, discussion and action calendar items. All matters on the discussion and action calendar will be discussed and acted on individually. Individuals wishing to speak on these items are asked to complete a speaker card and submit it to the city clerk. Comments should be directed to the mayor and council members and are limited to 3 minutes. By law, the council cannot discuss or take action on any items not on the posted agenda. Item 6A, fiscal year 2025-26 proposed preliminary budget. You'll receive a presentation for the 2025-26 proposed preliminary budget from the city's general fund and sewage funds. And I will pass it over to Joanne Moore.
I'm going to quickly make an introductory comment
Okay.
before Joanne takes over the presentation. I just wanted to remind the council that most of what's in this presentation tonight was already reviewed at the April 22nd budget workshop. There's only a couple of new items that came up since then and a couple of other changes that have been removed from the budget. But for the most part, much of this you have already seen and heard about before in April 22nd. And so we tried to set up the PowerPoint in such a way that is a reminder of what came from April 22nd, what's new, and what's been removed since then. And then the other thing I wanted to just say is that we plan to have the budget schedules for departments for the general fund and the sewage fund to the council early. We're planning to shoot for by the end of the business day tomorrow. And then we'll have a full staff report with all the budget schedules, including the special funds, posted with the rest of the agenda packet at the end of the week. So with that, I'll hand it over to Joanne.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. We're going to go over this little slideshow. Go ahead. So our little discussion outline this evening is we'll go over the preparation process, the actual preliminary budget, any changes and additions that we had made, some forecasting. We'll go over the sewer enterprise fund and then leave room for questions and direction. So our budget preparation process is a lengthy one. I feel like we have been working on this since probably March. But as we went through the 2025 budget preparation process, we built a base budget after all the forecasting was done after the mid-year 75% review. It wasn't really mid-year, but that we did in May. Reviewed and updated all of the city main operating funds, all the cost allocations and the construction in process focus and coordination of staff to determine fiscal needs. So we met with directors and discussed all of their needs within their department, what we made a priority need, what we have wants, we have needs, mostly needs around here. And then reviewed future revenue and expenditure trends and forecasts. So as it stands, our revenues were greater than our expenditures for the general fund budget, meaning we will not need to dip into any reserves for this coming fiscal year. So our projected revenues do include a 2% growth in property tax, the sales tax, and transient occupancy tax, adjusted to reflect current level of collections, continuation of appropriate cost allocations to the sewer enterprise fund, meaning what the sewer pays the general fund back for all of the shared costs that we have with them for staffing and overhead. And then inclusion of reimbursed costs with planning and engineering activities, and also the newest, the inclusion of the sales tax transaction and use tax, better known as Measure I, that we just passed. So with all of that, gives us a projection of revenues with the assumptions that everything just will move forward. So speaking of assumptions and unavoidable expenditures, again, all positions are fully funded for the entirety of the fiscal year. No salary savings are built in from vacancies. Only the negotiated and approved salary increases are included. The union contract that you guys have been working on netted about $112,000 increase in our budget from last year. Our sheriff's contract did increase 355,000, but we knew that, not a surprise. Health insurance will continue to rise every year. This year it was approximately a $23,000 increase. The unfunded pension liability did increase 80,000, and our liability, property, and vehicle insurance did increase 46,000. Overall, for all of the department expenses, we had an increase of $105,000. Again, that is just your basic overhead expenses, just the day-to-day, everything that we need to make this place run. Some, again, more proposed expenditures that we'll drill into, and these again were included in the April 22nd budget workshop. So the municipal code update, which will cost approximately $60,000. We are proposing an admin analyst for community development and services department. This one is only a half a year because we would start them January 1 of 2026. So this is just a half a year cost. IT upgrades, we have to replace expired computers, desktops, laptops, and that quote came in at approximately $31,000 as of May. That it could go up, we don't know. But when we did receive the quote, it was $31,000. The website update will cost about $10,000. A public works pickup, as you guys know, our superintendent's pickup expired. So this 42,000 is not the cost of the entire pickup. This is just the cost to the general fund. The sewer will pick up the rest of the amount. Public Works another proposed position is a part-time temporary maintenance worker. This would be limited to 960 hours for the year. We will use them for the 3 months in the summer months, and then they would come back next spring. It would help just with the mowing of the parks and just a general maintenance, and assist with the Public Works Department to have that extra employee do that time-consuming work. The asphalt replacement at the fire department, the total cost was quoted at $86,000. It would only cost the general fund $46,000 because our insurance and CCSIF will fund the $40,000. So that's a great cost savings for us.
Okay, just want to also mention that the community development services, that's a shared position with fire. If you recall, we forgot to put fire in there, but it is going to be split between those two departments.
Yeah, thank you, Marty, for that clarification.
Again, the finance department is proposing another finance and HR specialist. This person would not begin until the last quarter of the fiscal year, so beginning April 1st. So the 3 months would run approximately $20,000. We would like to continue with the TOT audit that HDL provided to make sure that our hotels are correctly reporting their TOT fees. And then we also have another temporary admin support position for our community development and services department. This again would be a limited position, less than 960 hours for the year, and this will help with general office support, front desk, reception, files, our transitions to our new software, just basic office support that we need. Council chambers, the AV equipment quote came in at $11,100, and library print material. Generally speaking, I want to say last year's budget was 6,000. She just requested 10,000 this year. So just a $4,000 increase. I didn't want you thinking that it was a $10,000 increase. It was a $4,000 increase.
Also, I want to mention that the council chamber AV equipment would deal with some of the crackling that we hear every time that we're at council, and we just heard a few minutes ago. So that would be part of that repair.
Also more changes that we made since then. We have removed fire engine 2, but we will bring that back during mid-year in the spring of next year. And remove the assistant library director position. So just some background on revenue. So we have our, what we call as the big three, the revenue sources that keep this place running. It's property tax, sales tax, and the transient occupancy tax, which makes up 77% of the general fund base revenues. Measure I will obviously increase that. That's new. We just don't know how that's going to work out. We're hoping that the projections will come in pretty accurately, which they usually are. HDL is really good about their projections. And then some, the recent reliance on one-time funding to fund critical citywide needs. And also fire and public works with their grants to help with equipment and operations. Inflation impacts everyday costs of providing services, labor benefit costs, health insurance, CalPERS costs, and utility costs are constantly rising. The existing number of staff and related costs required to deliver desired levels of service. City directly, we provide, an array of services between the administration, public works, community development, fire, library, and recreation. And the city, we do contract for a lot of our required services, obviously our police department and select administrative functions such as engineering, planning, code enforcement, building inspection. Our budget only captures known fiscal activity at a given time. Obviously, I do not have a crystal ball. I can't tell you what will happen tomorrow or next year. We just hoping that everything that we account for or forecast is something that we can just stick to and that nothing really crazy happens. Of course, we do have unforeseen, needs as the year progresses, such as this year when our superintendent's pickup broke. That was unexpected. Thankfully, we've been able to limp our way through it. But again, we do have to prepare for these unforeseen activities. This is a snapshot of our forecast right now. You can see last year, you can see last year we have a not temporary, but just a projected, because this year, when I say last year, I'm sorry, I've been working in 25, 26. So I feel like I'm in 25, 26. Current year, we're projecting about a $290,000 surplus. This next year, 25, 26, will show a $555,000 surplus if everything goes as planned.
Just
And
to
then-
just to ask a quick question.
Yeah.
Those are those combined numbers, or is that a strictly year based?
That is year-based.
500,000.
Like, look
Okay.
at those as silos, if you will.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
It's just giving you a snapshot of that 1 year.
What that year's revenues and expenses should be. Perfect. That's what I wanted to know. Thank you.
And then our updated fund balance, you can see it is, based on projections. Again, we don't have a crystal ball, but we can just base on assumptions and projections that it will continue to increase as the years go by. There are some fund balance improvement opportunities that we could do to grow base revenue in the city. Obviously, it has been discussed, the sale of city-owned properties. Again, that's a one-time shot, but it will bring in some revenue. Transient occupancy tax increases due to the auditing that we want to continue to do so that we know that the numbers are accurate from the local motels and hotels. Potential tax revenue from the 2 future cannabis dispensaries. We don't know when and how that will happen, but that will be a nice revenue base. And then, of course, applying for state and federal grants that we have been doing. We will move on to the sewer fund. So the preliminary budget for next year, our revenues are 2.3 million and our expenditures are 4.9 million. Our projected sewer fund balance at the end of next fiscal year will be 1.7 million.
And a quick question on that. So
Yes.
the expenditures are doing some major capital improvements, correct?
Correct. It's bond, it's from the bonds that were issued. So they were not all done. They were all scheduled to go this year, but it's now pushed to next year. And I know a lot of the, like some of the bids are going out, is what I believe Joe told me.
We're planning on all the improvements with the bond money to be completed by December of this year. They were supposed to be completed by December of 24, but we have let our bond holders know that we are a year behind schedule. And they are, as long as we keep working on it, and making progress, they're fine.
I think I'd like to see down the road how separating the bonded, how this affects the general fund balance. So next year's fiscal sewer fund, like, are we projected to add or subtract from the sewer fund balance, and how, that gets parsed out with bonds down the road?
You mean if we subtract the bonds from the sewage fund revenue?
Right.
What does
but,
that look
right
like?
now, as presented, we're running like a $2.5 million deficit to this general fund, but we still have money, right? Because it's parsed out from the
No,
bonds,
that's,
right?
No,
it's
we already have
completely
money
separate.
sitting there,
Yeah,
actually.
okay.
That's
Yeah.
why it looks like that, because it's revenue that's
Mhm.
coming in, but really there's already money sitting in the account that's not revenue because it's from the bond.
Yeah.
That's what we're using to pay the 4.9 million in improvements.
But yeah, seeing how that
I see what you
a
mean.
little bit more detail.
Yeah, we can figure out how we can back out the bonds and really see what that looks like without bond money, revenue versus.
They're like, hey, this is what our general fund looks like. This is what our bond's worth. And this is what's coming out of it.
I mean, I think it'll be-
Specifically how it affects the sewer fund.
Right, yeah, well, we definitely, we are, I mean, assuming you approve it, we will be moving forward with the Prop 218 study again this year, because it's been almost 5 years, and we do have to do another study. We want to keep up on those. You don't want to let 10 years go by like last time, because then that's usually not good. So,
And Marty,
Right.
if you could also chart the sunset period with those monies that we need to expend also when you compile that information together, appreciate it.
the sunset for,
Right, the earmarked bond revenues,
oh, right.
funding revenues, if you could make a notation when those need to be expended as well.
It was supposed to be December of
Right,
24.
but
Yeah,
when you
okay,
prepare your new document, so
got it.
keeps
Okay,
it fresh in our minds so everyone understands.
right,
Thank you.
okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so the sewer, obviously, I included the programmed rate increase for the sewer service rates consistent with the rate study. Going back to our capital projects and maintenance that include multiple lift stations, the Lassen Street sewer rehab, wastewater treatment improvements and upgrades, the annual sewer replacement project, and the Shasta and Butte Street replacement project. That equals 2.9 million. Again, that was bond money. That's not general fund. This is a completely separate fund because it is an enterprise fund. The two things that we are asking for from this budget, from not bond money, this will actually be sewer revenue, is the Prop 218 study, which will run about $50,000, and to bring in sewer billing in-house from Cal Water and putting the sewer on the tax roll. We will need our Tyler module, the utility billing module, and that quote came in at 17.5.
If I could just quickly add, the 17.5 is a one-time expense, and then each year after that would be 9,000. So it's a startup amount, but then future years it'd be 9,000.
For just that one module?
That is correct. Yeah.
So I know I'm kind of
Wow.
new up here, and when we started talking about bringing the sewer billing in-house because Cal Water doesn't want to do the billing for us, which I understand, that's our commercial properties. But when I look at our residential properties, those are on our property tax base, so we send a list to the county. If the county charges us to do that, I'd like to know what that is, because in my mind, the sewer billing on the property tax base, the homeowner, the property owner is paying that. A lot of times that's paid through their impound accounts as part of their mortgage. It's a payment they know is there, but they don't feel it. We start sending them out a bill monthly, quarterly, whatever. I would anticipate, based on my experience in real estate and talking to people about these bills on a regular basis and how expensive the sewer feels to most people, that if they get a bill and they have to see it every month or see it every quarter and write a check for it, and if they don't pay it, there's really no consequence. We don't shut the water off. We don't put a little gate on their sewer. So I would imagine we would have a lot of delinquent payments, which then forces us into becoming a collection agency or having a collection agency. So I've just had some conversations with the city manager. I would be curious to see if in fact the county, has the county ever said they are not going to do it for us anymore? I mean, they do.
No, they haven't.
They haven't said that. So, and even if there's a cost, anything that's a base rate for the sewer, my opinion would be it's much better to give that list to the county and put it on the property tax records, because then it's going to get paid. If the property taxes don't get paid, it's a bigger lien on the property. It's going to be more substantial, more impactful. And I just don't think we're going to be spinning in circles. When it comes to the commercial, and this would be part of what we look at as we do a new Prop 218, commercial has a base rate, but they also have a volume based on water usage. We have a lot of commercial, or at least several commercial, that are retail stores that use minimal water. So their base rate's pretty much their biggest rate. So I'd be curious in a 218, and I haven't gone back to look at the last 218 study to really look at those commercial assessments to see how they break out commercial. You know, who are our truly heavy water users in the commercial world that have a higher hit on the volume? I mean, I've talked to some businesses downtown that the amount of sewer assessment for water usage is like $1. It's very minimal. So again, could we not at least consider on commercial, if there is in fact a base rate, I don't know that for positive, but I think there is, that would also go on the property tax base. Because now if someone shuts the water off, say someone's in a building, they rent it, so they turn the water on. So now the sewer's being charged on the water bill. We'd still have to be charging a base rate that gets paid all the time, but then the water's turned off. So you have a property owner who owns the property. You've got a tenant who does the water. Now you're billing two people. Some of it's going to be negligible. So in my mind, we're spending $17,500 for a module that allows us to do a billing that, I could be wrong, but I think we're asking for a lot of in the weeds work chasing that down.
Yeah, I do think that it's gonna be perceived as a new bill, right? If it went from an escrow account to a paper bill, it's a new bill. Is there a revenue upside?
So, Councilmember Pride and I did have this conversation yesterday, and I did start figuring out what the cost is to do it the way we're doing it, including what Cal Water is charging and what the city engineer has a role in this as well, that he wouldn't have anymore if we brought it in-house. And then I have a inquiry out to the county to ask that very question about what are we paying? Because we get charged $50,000 a year by the county, a straight admin fee, which includes the admin costs to generate our property taxes, as well as this, doing this exercise for us of residential sewage fees. So I've asked them if they could separate that out and tell me, well, what does it just cost to do the sewage billing, so that, and I don't have an answer from them yet. I figured out the other items, but I was planning to try to get that to the council as soon as possible, that information, because I think that those are really good questions for sure. One thing I would just say is, you know, the county has been clear, they will not do volumetric. They have said that from the beginning. When I first got here, I was like, why do we have two different entities doing our billing? And I went to the county and said, can't you also do commercial? And they're like, If it's a flat rate, we'll do it, but we're not doing volumetric. They're not willing to do that. Whereas Cal Water does the calculation for us. And to be truthful, we have to double check their work. And the last 3 years in a row, there's been problems with Cal Water's calculations. And if we didn't double check it, which means the city engineer being involved, that would be, we've already had problems. You already all know that. So that would be an ongoing issue. And as Councilmember Pride said, Cal Water doesn't want to do this anymore. That's really the impetus for trying to, other options are to go to utility management systems out of Chico. That's what Marysville, they use UMS. That's how I get my bill at home. We could outsource it altogether. But one way or another, we have to do something about the Cal Water component because I get asked about every 6 months, are you working on this? Because we don't want to do this forever. So
Correct me if I'm wrong, but the Tyler module costs the same whether we're just doing commercial or commercial and residential.
that is correct. Yeah. And that I just want to remind you again, the 17,000 is a one-time, it's 9,000 a year after that.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and it's increased staff time also. So, adding a position to do the billing. And so I just, want to look at it from all angles. So you made a comment that if we brought the billing in-house, we wouldn't need the city engineer wouldn't need to be involved anymore. But then I thought I heard you say that they're involved in the volumetrics portion of it. So that's going to be something they're involved in.
No,
Cal
they're
Water.
only involved in double checking Cal Water's work. We would then be doing that. And it would be in the module.
So Cal Water's got to give us the information. And then
They
we-
just give us the volume of water. And then after that, we would figure it out internally. The volumetric piece.
What's the likelihood of us messing up the numbers or misbilling?
Sorry?
Of us misbilling? What you said Cal Water had incidences of messing
Yeah,
up the
well, there were
bills.
things that we thought were on the list that weren't on the list and we found out a year later, and that
Okay.
became a problem.
And then once you
I
guys do it
personally think
in-house,
We would have more control over it because now we have two different entities doing this on our behalf. And every year the city engineer has to generate the residential list because the county won't let us just say, oh, we just have one new person. You have to regenerate and resubmit the entire list every year for residential. And then Cal Water takes the commercial and they submit to us and say, here's all your commercial. Double check these numbers. Does this look right to you? And we have to sign off and double check their work.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank
that sounds fun.
And just for clarification, the new position in the finance department would not be 100% sewer billing. That is, it would, obviously we would need another person to handle this part, but that's also for, internal controls, segregation of duties to have that, third person in the department and to pull some of the working duties off of me. Obviously I'm not opposed to them, but just to make the flow make more sense. This would not just be one person to deal with sewer billing every day. And going back to the, kind of like too many cooks in the kitchen, that's how mistakes are made. So it would just streamline everything for in this, use the beautiful system that you guys purchased and grow off of it. It's the same thing on what we have the rec module, business licenses. We have the code enforcement that we're getting ready to do. Make it all just uniform and in one place instead of piecemealing out here and there and everywhere. And then again, things get missed, revenue gets lost. So it might just be something that would be, best for the city overall.
How many staff hours are you contemplating will be needed to do the sewage billing?
I don't know, because I don't know how it really works. In the demo, it seems pretty, once you set up the system, that's the hardest part is setting it up. But after you get going, it's not that complicated. Everything's pretty intuitive with Tyler, for the most part. But there will be a learning curve, obviously, because it's new. But just like with accounts payable and, payroll, everything, it's a whole process. It's a step-by-step process, but it didn't seem too terrible when we watched the demonstration. It looked really nice. It links up really nicely with my general ledger accounts, the cash or the money that flows in, because you would be able to do your payments through the portal, same how we do with recreation right now. And everything just gets posted to the general ledger, saving on staff data entry time. Whereas now everything's done by hand. When we receive payments, we do everything by hand. This would sort of, I don't want to say automate because I don't like that word, but it just makes everything run a little bit smoother and again, less room for error.
If I could just add, just quickly to what Joanne just said, if the council's really not ready to pull the trigger on making this purchase and moving forward until these questions are answered, we can remove it from the budget right now and do our due diligence and homework and get the information that you'd like to see and hear and come back in 2 or 3 months. I mean, this is $17,500 out of the sewage fund. It's not this earth-shattering amount. And then we can update the sewage fund during the mid-year if there's more comfort around that. And you want to get pricing and revenue and all those kinds of things, that maybe we do that due diligence and then come back and ask you again in 2 or 3 months.
But
No, I think we just kind of got stuck on a.
yeah, I think we're
rabbit
just asking questions. It sounds like we don't have a choice, right? We got to take over for Cal Water, which is modules necessary anyway. Right?
Eventually, I mean, you might come back and say, well, look at UMS, like out of Chico, like Marysville's using, or I don't know. I mean, I didn't think it would be as good, quite frankly. And here's the other piece of it that's not really, that Joanne has touched on, is that we're getting to a point that if the council wants to move away from having a finance consultant, AKA Andy Heath, then that is more work on Joanne's plate. And in order to really be able to justify a full-time person taking work from Andy, giving it to Joanne, it also makes sense to bring in the sewage in-house so that there is the full amount of work, because there'll be plenty for them to do with, Joanne taking things from Andy and no longer paying 35 or 40,000 a year for him and bringing in sewage. There will be plenty for a third person. So it's kind of all connected. And if you want to go a different route, like I said, the UMS, certainly the council can consider something different, but then that means we'll continue to move along with an Andy Heath person in the wings doing some of the work, which is again, 35 or 40, we're down to about 35,000 a year now. Because he does all our audit prep and reconciliations right now. That would be something, Joanne certainly can do it, but not with her current workload. So this is part of a bigger picture, and, maybe we should have couched this differently. I
Well,
don't
and
know.
I don't really have a problem with the concept.
No.
I'm just, again, knowing what I know from my real life, I'm just anticipating, probably a significant amount of non-payments. And what does that look like then in terms of collections, and how much time do we then spend in collections, and what's our ultimate recourse? So that's just kind of what.
Yeah,
I'm thinking about.
Sam, I don't find the solution objectionable. I just want to make sure we flesh out, because I think like the first 3 months, right? You're going to have increased call volumes. You're going to have a lot more like
Absolutely.
legwork. Like, hey, let's make sure that we're pulling on all these threads and make sure we know what we're signing up for before we sign up.
You're
for
going to have a tremendous amount of ongoing scrutiny of the sewer fund.
Right.
Well,
I mean,
and
Microscopic.
And that's why I just said it's not going to hurt the world if we wait 2 or 3 months while we pull all of this stuff together for you. If there's a more comfort level with that, I'm perfectly fine with doing that.
I'm also mindful, and again, being newer up here, as we've passed Measure I and we're talking about adding positions, I'm also wanting to make sure that we just have these conversations about, are they really necessary? And I appreciate, Joanne, your staff report, because it is important that we have, I think, depth, and that we're not paying higher level staff to do more of the day-to-day operational things. And I'm just always mindful that we don't staff for peak workloads, so if we have little peaks, those are where the Andy Heaths come in. But if it's a day-to-day, we need the people, we need the work. I just want to be out in the public. And if people ask, I said, well, you're adding the CDS fire position, and now you're adding a finance position. And they see a lot of that as the admin in-house. And I just want to be able to look at them and go, it's critical, for us to keep the city moving forward in a healthy way.
Well,
So,
I
thank
feel like since I've been here, I have heard from the public and council members, some of you that are still current and former council members, about bringing more work in-house and using less consultants. And so I feel like that's what we're trying to do here. So, yeah.
It
anyways,
makes sense. I just want to
I
make sure we
understand.
flesh it
Yeah,
out.
that's fine.
I would leave it in the budget.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you're going to go ahead and finish when we get to the
We're-
Q and
We're
A.
having a
portion of
discussion
your-
about sewer,
Yeah.
but this is really a budget issue, so
Mm-hmm.
I would leave it in the budget and move on.
Yeah, I agree with Vice Mayor Thomas's comments, just in case, because all these points, although, all good points, but these all have to be vetted out when we do conduct the Proposition 218 study process, right? These are all sewer enterprise related costs associated to delivery of sewage services. So every one of them. And this all be needed to be vetted out. We've talked for some time about bringing, more contract services in-house and right. That's what we're talking about doing here. So but I just want to remind everybody, all these thought processes here will be vetted out during the study, the Prop 218 study
Mhm.
process. They're going to have to be.
Mhm.
So, thank you.
Also, as a side note, going back to sewer billing, bringing it in-house, it will take quite a while to build that module. This one takes the longest to build. So it is a good probably 12 to 18 months out before we could actually begin using it. It's I would say if we even sign the contract right now in July, it will be at least 6 to 8 months before they would even start working on it. And then it's a lot of months where they work behind the scenes before I actually step in and start with our stuff. So I feel like at that time or during that time, you could do an education plan or let the community know like, hey, these changes are coming. Like going back to, all of our purchases of the Tyler Technologies programs, this is going to be one more. We've already done rec, we've done, payroll, we've done the finance. So this will be one more, but you do have a lot of lead time to be able to educate, the community out there that this is coming and be prepared. We could do that, however we would do it, but just an idea. That way we don't just wake up one day and now they get a bill in the mail and they're like, wait, what? No. So just food for thought, I guess. If you
Yeah,
will.
I mean, a letter in the Cal water bill, some sort of
Mhm. Yeah.
notice, another notice in your property taxes, we could do that later this year, that kind of thing.
Cal Water's wanted out of this for many years now, and one of these years they're going to pull the switch.
Yeah.
Guaranteed.
They're doing it in other
Absolutely.
places,
Yeah.
so yeah.
Joanne,
Yes.
did you finish or did you want to, you
I just
have
have
line
like a
items?
couple of lines.
Okay,
left.
go ahead.
Just to let you know, the sewer fund budget does include a charge of approximately 261,000 that will go back to the general fund, and that is, wages, just a portion of the public works staff, admin staff, some overhead costs that we do share with the sewer fund. And then at the end of the year, if all the projections are as is, our operating margin before now this doesn't include all the capital projects, is a $338,000 surplus. So it's not losing money, if you will.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Now, questions.
Councilmember Pride, would you like to start us off?
I got mine answered.
Okay. Councilmember Thomas, any questions, comments?
Well, I have a
concerns?
few. First, I'd like to comment that when we passed the Measure I, we signed on for the Measure I Oversight Committee. And one of the things we were going to do with that is identify where we're spending that additional tax revenue. So when you're going through the process, we need to kind of earmark, these are the items that we've identified that we're spending some of this money on from the new sales tax. So we can honor our commitment when we ask them to pass the budgets. And it could easily be the 335 that we're paying additionally for the sheriff.
Mhm.
That would be the first part. Second part would be, we brought on the additional people so we can do this, allowed us to hire the contractor or the additional person to help mow the lawns in the winter and the summertime and that kind of things. We just need to be able to identify how we're spending that for the benefit of the citizens.
Yeah, I did this in Marysville with their sales tax. We did an annual report.
So that was my one comment. IT upgrades, I understand we need a new phone system. Is that in this budget?
It is.
Yes, it is.
Because I only see replace expired computers at 31,000.
It is in the budget. We had.
I didn't see where that was.
I did not put it in there. Thank you for.
I think partly the reason though was it's really replacing existing
Yeah.
system. It's not like this is like a new thing. We need a phone system and the one we have is expired. So it's replacing it. That's
So
why
that would
we
be
didn't treat it like a new item.
new phones and yeah, it's
Yeah.
It is in
upgrading
there though.
and
I don't
replacing
remember. I don't remember the
adequate
amount.
Equipment. I just didn't see that in here and didn't know if that's needed to be in here, but
Well, when we
make
get
sure that
the,
we provide for it.
yes, when we provide you with the budget schedules, it'll be, I don't know where it is in the schedule, but it'll have to be somewhere. right?
Well, it's all lumped into a general ledger line, so I do have an amount somewhere. I can find it for you.
I don't need the answer.
Oh,
I
it
don't
is
need to
in
know
there.
about it. I
That
just
is
need to know
your,
that you've
yes,
allocated.
it
for
is. It is in there.
No, I have a lot more green on here than that, so hold on a second. That's new.
We're getting a new soundboard if you approve it.
We're gonna miss that.
Apparently that was all my questions. Because I've gone through that from before and now, so.
Right.
Yield the floor back to you, Mr. Mayor.
Perfect. Councilmember Busby, any questions?
One comment or a couple comments, one question. To kind of piggyback off of what Rick was saying on the Measure I Oversight Committee, just doing the math, like if you go to slide 6, or if anybody's paying attention, the unavoidable expenditures, right? Hey, this is cost of doing business. These things are not in our control. $721,000 or 10% of the budget is increased out of our control. Just wanted to say that out loud. I'm curious as to on the graph. I know we've seen this graph, slide 13. We've seen this graph a few times, which is the general fund revenue and expenditures. And I think that kind of it keeps getting updated because we're going off of projections, obviously.
Right.
But just looking backwards a little bit, again, to kind of reiterate the point of what it costs to run a city, I'd be curious to see what the projected fiscal year 23-24 versus the audited. Looking at this, I think some of the graphs that even the ones that I've gone through, we weren't forecasting an $800,000 deficit. That's a lot. And that a lot of those things were out of our control and everything like that. But again, to just make the point that this stuff costs way more than people think it costs.
And did you want to go back and look at the 23-24? That's
Just-
2 years ago now.
What was projected versus what actually happened, just so
Okay.
as we are making decisions, understand that, hey, we have a margin of error of up to this much.
Got it. I can absolutely get you that information.
That's it for me.
That's what the squiggly equal sign means, right?
Yeah.
Approximately.
Fox.
Councilmember Hanson?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, a good point, Matt, to reiterate that because there will be operational unknowns. That's a given. That will happen. So very good point. No surprises except for one. Marty and Joanne, in reference to the 25-26 preliminary budget report. Thank you for the presentation. When I came across page 9 with the removal of Willows Fire Engine 2 replacement, that startled me. Thank you, Marty, for answering my questions in reference to why. But we have been kicking this can down the road for some time, and we can't do that any longer. So I definitely pray that this will be rectified within the next few months, once
Yes.
and for all.
Mid-year budget. Yep.
Thank you. Definitely. I mean, this has been number one on my budget request as one member of the 5 member body here for several years. And there's always some reason it comes up. The costs just continue to rise. We badly need the piece of apparatus for public safety. So I've said my piece. So thank you, Marty, for addressing my concerns with that.
And just to mention, Congressman LaMalfa's hopefully generous award that hopefully that goes through the federal budget threw a wonderful wrench in our plan. And it's a really good positive thing. And we're hoping that it is approved at the federal level. But it did mean, it was very recent, and it did mean it completely threw us into like, oh, we've got all these options now. And we just couldn't digest it and figure out enough to give a recommendation to you in time for the budget. And that's why the fire chief and I talked about it and I just said, let's just sit on it. The money's not going to go anywhere and figure it out so we can come back with a fully vetted recommendation to the council that shows we've done all our homework and we've, chased down every rabbit hole for funding sources and have a good recommendation to the council. And it doesn't hurt anything because the fire chief won't be ready to pull the trigger on putting it in order until after January 1st anyways.
Very good. Good to know. Thank you. That's all I had, Mr. Mayor.
Perfect, thank you. Quick question for you, a couple quick questions. What's the difference between part-time temporary and part-time permanent? And why would we choose part-time temporary for the public works position instead of a part-time permanent?
Because we are going to be splitting that part-time person over like 2 different periods of the year. I don't know if it'll be the same person.
Okay, so this would be seasonal almost.
Yes,
Okay,
it's a seasonal employee,
okay,
basically. So
Gotcha.
it could be, a teenager right after high school or whatever. So we just didn't want to commit to, a permanent part-time because their position will end after a few months of the summertime, when we get into fall and then
Okay.
return with the option to return, or we just, go and hire another person for the springtime work.
And in
Okay.
contrast, the library part-time positions are part-time permanent. To
Right, okay.
compare what we're talking about as a comparison.
Right, and that makes sense. It's, hey, you're here for a couple months and then you're gonna go and maybe you can come back, maybe you don't.
Right.
Got it. And then the asphalt replacement behind the fire department, we did discuss that is gonna be concrete, right? Not asphalt again, because the asphalt's going. And that's including also filling in or pulling out the old water tank.
The tank's gonna get sand. It's cheaper to fill with sand.
So we're gonna have a sandbox back there for the kids to go play in. Cool. And then just one thing I wanted to point out was, one thing that we're doing here at the city is that we are actually looking to create 3 new job positions, that haven't been filled in a while. Actually more than that. Those are just the ones that we discussed here, to hopefully better serve our community. And I think that's kind of a big thing to kind of state because, we've been fairly understaffed. And so we're filling positions that haven't been filled for a while and, creating 3 new ones that haven't been created before. And that's just to better serve our community. And then I noticed, I remember during our April 22nd meeting, we kind of discussed call it a Murphy's Law fund to keep it politically correct. Is that kind of in the budget now to say, hey, we're setting aside funds for a fire truck blew a tire on I-5 or public works backhoe, broke down and it's going to cost X amount?
I think what came away from the April, my recollection was that starting in this fiscal year coming up 25, 26, we would take we would create an apparatus fund from strike team and the monies that we get from the state for the use of our vehicles. And that money would go into like an apparatus fund
Okay.
for that. And that's what I thought that the council agreed to. So that would be starting this fiscal year, whatever strike team we go out, then the rental amount that we get paid back, the lease amount from the state for using our vehicles, that money would basically go into a separate line item for future apparatus. That's
Okay.
what my recollection is of what the council
Yeah.
direction.
Is there something that we have along the lines of that for public works though? Is that-
Well, my other recollection was that, the short answer is no, but the longer answer was that it was agreed, and Nate, correct me if I'm wrong, that apparatus fund would be for both departments, even though it is coming from the lease of fire trucks for strike team. I know you don't like it, but that was
Yeah.
discussed.
Yeah, and one of the ways that we did, I found it. Was tobacco.
And so then I would recommend that the revenue from that also be put into the apparatus fund from those 2 particular things when the state leases them for pre-positioning and other types of state emergencies.
Perfect. Okay. And that's all I had. Thank you, Joanne.
Yeah, thank you,
Very
Joanne.
well done.
Cool.
That's your second one of those, isn't it? Third one?
Second.
I'll be back
Getting
next week.
better.
Yeah.
Awesome. With that, we will move on. Let me reorganize my notes here. All right. We are on to item 7B, EKG monitor lease agreement. For this, we will hand this over to Chief Monk.
I didn't think about you. Which we are getting one was sales tax, then the other was startup equipment. The charging stations, some of the cables and things like that, that goes beyond just the actual EKG monitor to make the monitor work the way we need to. So this item, as a result of those two events, the cost of of two monitors with all the things that we need in order to put them in service ended up being $57,000. So about 22,000, almost $23,000 more than what we received in grant funding. With talking with Captain Lombard, the other paramedic on the staff, and myself, about what kind of monitors we thought would be the best. We looked at, we settled on Zoll. They're the same monitors that both Enloe Ambulance uses and Westside uses. And we're both familiar with using them. We've used them for quite a while. So we went with Zoll. We went with Zoll, and with talking with the Zoll rep, we chose to go with like new refurbished models that were about half the cost of brand new machines. Looking at that, with talking with them and trying to figure out a way to lessen that burden to the general fund all at once. Zoll offered a zero interest lease option where we basically will own the, instead of the word lease, interject the term purchase agreement, where basically we would pay 66%, which is about $38,000 this fiscal year. So expend all of the 35,000 out of the grant plus a little bit more to get that 66%. And then for fiscal year 25, 26, we wouldn't have a payment. And then in 26, 27, we'd have a payment and then of about 9,000 and change. And then in fiscal year 26, or 27, 28, the third and final payment would be there. We anticipate that these monitors should last about 10 years before we need to start phasing them out. Might get a little bit longer out of one of them. Probably the one that lives in the Chiefs pickup will probably wear out a little bit slower than the one that's on the engine. And with that, I will answer any questions that you guys have and prepare to fall on a sword, I guess.
Councilmember Thomas, any questions?
Nope.
Councilmember Pride?
So with the monitor, can only the paramedics do it, or can any of the EMR, EMT volunteers be trained to utilize it?
So
Yes and no.
yes and no. Yeah, that's a good answer. So I haven't fleshed out exactly operationally what I'm going to do with the monitor when for example, Captain Lombard is not working for now. Part of me wants to leave the monitor on the engine all the time. That way if Captain Lombard comes in on his day off, which he often does, the equipment's there for him to use. The other thing, EMTs can use a lot of the functions of the monitor. Like they can put the blood pressure cuff on and cycle it. They can put the electrodes on and do the 12 lead to take a picture of the heart, but they're not allowed to interpret, right? So part of me wants to have it there so they can use those tools. And when the ambulance gets there, they already have the picture and they can hand it to the paramedic that walks in. But they would still need to carry their regular AED if they weren't at that paramedic level.
Perfect. Councilmember Busby?
What is the planned service life of a Zoll EKG?
10 to 15 years. 10, I would say is what I have seen. A lot of the ALS departments that I've worked for, but I've mostly worked for ALS departments that also had ambulances. So kind of what I saw is that the older ones got put on the engine and the newer ones went on the ambulance, and then they would kind of rotate them through that way. I'm guessing 10 to 15.
And then these are expensive pieces of equipment. Do we need to amend our insurance or anything like that to include them in coverage, or are they coverable?
I don't know for sure. That's a really good question. My initial thought is no. We also have like our BAs, our self-contained breathing apparatus. Those are, $10,000-$15,000 a piece, and we don't have those itemized. But I know in the past we've had expensive equipment stolen off of fire engines, and the auto insurance covered it because it was assigned to that apparatus.
Okay.
So I would just update the inventory list, because like I have an inventory list of engine 2 has Motorola radio, serial number, blah, 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 blah. So if something like that happens, I can say these were the serial numbers that were assigned to this apparatus, and they're not missing.
We can also investigate that with, because I'm actually in the middle of updating all of our insurance information right now with our provider and our broker. So it might be an interesting question just to ask, is that sufficient coverage, or should we be doing something more? They're very, very helpful.
Yeah, right on. The breathing apparatus, they consider like a consumable, so they get weird about covering them.
Yeah.
But like this might be one where
Yeah.
it might be worth it.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Councilmember Hanson?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just real briefly. No, this is preservation of life here in Little Valley, enhance our fire department's emergency response. And I think it's great. I mean, I really like the payment plan. I think that's a good approach, Chief, and I'd like to thank Cal Water for their generous grant of $35,000, and also you, Chief. Thank you very much for your diligent work chasing these opportunities down and bringing it forward. Very good. The refurbished gear, I mean, at much reduced cost, we get 10 years of life out of it. It's fantastic. So this is a no-brainer, something we need to do. So thanks, Nate.
Thank you.
Good job. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I got a couple questions for you, Chief.
Okay.
Why two? Why not just one?
One will be, the thought is that one will go in the first out engine, for when Captain Lombard's working, and that the other one will live in my pickup. So on the day, because I'm there obviously Monday through Friday. So on the days that, the engine is not staffed with, Captain Lombard, I will still have all the ALS equipment in my truck that I can respond to calls, and it's all there.
Perfect. Annual costs of running the EKG machine. What are we looking at for replacement parts? I mean, I'm assuming there's some sort of calibration that goes into it annually.
Yeah, so that's a good question. It's varied, right? There's always the human factor where I've done it myself where I'm cutting off a shirt and I accidentally cut an EKG cable with the scissors, right? So take the human factor out of it. I'm guessing anywhere from 1,000 to 2,000 a year. But that would also be including the current inspections and software updating that we should be doing on our AEDs that we're going to be starting this year.
Okay.
Because the AEDs technically are supposed to get the same annual software update.
And then like new, but not new. So does that mean replaced with Zoll parts,
Yeah, so
straight out of China
basically,
knockoffs, or?
basically when this more fortunate organizations or better funded organizations replace stuff at 3 or 5 years, oftentimes they'll have like buyback programs. So they'll say, hey, we want 10 brand new monitors and we're going to give you our 5-year monitors back. And so they get a
Mhm.
discounted rate and they go to back to Zoll. Zoll opens them up, tests them all, replaces the parts that need to be replaced, and then puts them back together, puts the Zoll stamp back on it. And
Comes back with a manufacturer's
yeah,
warranty
it's
and all.
basically like when you get like an iPhone through insurance, right? And it's a refurbished iPhone 10 or whatever it is.
That's why I kind of asked the questions because I've had actually bad luck with those. But I'm assuming that with medical equipment, they go through a much more rigorous test than
Yeah.
my iPhone did. Okay. I think that's all the questions I had. So that'll be awesome. Oh, when do we expect these to arrive and to be put in operation?
So they'll arrive within 6 to 8 weeks. Before they get put into operation, there's a bit of a administrative lift that I've been working on.
Okay.
As things happen and events happen, things get shuffled in the priority list. And I think one of the things that has moved this back up the higher list of priorities is some of the uncertainties with Glen Medical Center. And so getting this ALS option for us back up on the table has been expedited because of that. My goal, realistic, would be by the end of the fiscal year, have all the stuff into SSV, all the rest of the equipment showed up, all the policies written for. I mean, there's like a 15-page packet of policies that we need to have, and all of those things to get SSV, which is our LEMSA, to give us the sign off and say, we're going to allow you to operate as paramedics now.
Perfect. Thanks. Good job getting the grant. Excuse me. Good job getting the grant, and thank you for your effort and doing all the work that you've done. With that, this a voting item?
Mr. Mayor,
Yeah,
if you're ready.
I will give this up to the council. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Is there any public comment on item 7B? No public comment.
Caitlin doesn't have any public comment. Mr. Mayor, I move that item 7B, the EKG monitor lease agreement matter be approved as presented.
I'll
I have a
second.
first, and I have Lori as a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passed 5-0. All right. Again, thanks, Chief. Next up is item 7C, sale of city-owned property, title and appraisal services report. We will pass this off to Marty. No, am I on the wrong one?
I'm like, what?
I've got-
Where
I've
are
got
we?
item 7C.
Yeah, there's no 7C, there's an 8A public hearing.
May I borrow yours? Because mine all got mixed up with the three
The
other
prior
special meetings
council
from the
meeting.
prior council meeting. I apologize. Sorry.
Florida's like, what?
Gotcha.
Exactly.
Sorry.
Evan wants to stay here longer tonight.
Next up, item 8, public hearing. All matters of this section of the agenda are formal public hearings and will be acted on individually. Individuals wishing to speak on these items are asked to complete speaker card and submit to the city clerk. Comments should be directed to the mayor and council members and are limited to 3 minutes. If you have any documentation that you would like distributed to the council, please give it to the city clerk for distribution. First item, item 8A, ordinance for temporary moratorium on future applications for mobile food trucks. Recommended action, hold a public hearing to adopt an ordinance authorizing the temporary moratorium on new mobile food truck applications in the city of Willows by title only and waive the second reading. This was supposed to be presented by Joe Betancourt, so I'm assuming that city manager is taking over today.
That is correct. Community Development Service Director is on vacation. Yeah, I don't have anything to add because this is a virtual, like this is literally the same exact staff report as was presented a couple of weeks ago. This is a public hearing and the second reading for the council, and it's really up for your consideration. As you may recall, the suggestion for the moratorium was during the period of the municipal code update, which we anticipate to be another roughly 12 months. And it has no impact on currently approved and permitted food trucks. This would only be for new applications and for that roughly that time frame. Beyond that, I don't have anything else to add, although perhaps Councilmember Pride does.
I would just like to add a little bit since this is something that I brought forward. I think it's been interesting since we've been having this agendized and just looking at what's going on in other communities that are experiencing quite the influx of food trucks. And it's not that it's a negative thing, it's just that it is an impact in different areas. And in a lot of communities, there is a lack of code to kind of manage that. The city manager forwarded me an agenda item and a staff report for Calexico, California, that's having a meeting tomorrow night. And they're actually having a study session on a food truck workshop discussion on regulatory frameworks for mobile food vendors. And so I just wanted to say again tonight, whether this is as successful as a moratorium or not, we need to take the time to develop a clear and balanced regulatory framework to guide the food truck industry in a way that supports economic development, ensures public safety, respects neighborhood integrity, and complements our existing brick and mortar restaurants. Some of the regulatory and logistical concerns that need to be addressed is zoning. Where do we want food trucks to be? I think particularly for Willows, our history or our precedent setting has been having food trucks on owned property. So they're not moving. They're actually stationary food trucks. In most jurisdictions, they're mobile, and we may run across food trucks that actually want to be more transitory and mobile. So zoning is a consideration, whereas currently they're only allowed in central commercial with our very limited reference to mobile businesses at all. We want to deal with health and safety. We want to deal with noise issues, aesthetics, parking, in a really comprehensive, cohesive way that one embraces the industry. It is cutting edge. It is new. It allows people to get started in the restaurant business in a more economical way. But we also want to make sure that we're looking at business retention for our existing businesses, our restaurants. Recently, there was an article in Woodland, a restaurant closed, and they cited it was directly related because of the impacts of the food trucks affecting their business. So there's just many, many aspects to it. And I think another issue that we're seeing is that we need a good relationship and a good, clear communication with the County of Glen, the Environmental Health Department. Right now, we're experiencing, in my opinion, some disconnects where they issue the health permit for the facility, but we're not having them really. They give out the health permit, but they don't yet have a business license from us. We haven't talked about zoning. We haven't talked about our code requirements. And in my research, I'm finding there's even more. Those food trucks are supposed to be registered through Housing and Community Development if they have people in them preparing food. And I haven't seen that in any of our food trucks. So again, food trucks are not bad. I think food trucks are good. I saw the fiasco that we had in permitting our last one because of our lack of clear code that would guide it in a very efficient manner that would benefit that person. So whether we do a moratorium so we don't put anything through any angst while we develop a good framework or not, my research has given us a lot of fun stuff to do for things for us to consider. That's all I'm going to say. We're gonna do whatever we do tonight.
I think one thing to add on to that, I know that there's some consternation about the perception of being anti-business. Some of the stuff that I came across on this, certain municipalities actually limit the amount of permits allocated based on population. So just purely out of support until we get this rewritten and figure out where we're at, just purely out of support for our existing food trucks, I'm still for this just because we may find that if we write 3 more permits, well, now we've fallen outside of some sort of oversaturation and watered it down for everybody. So I want to take the time to get this right and support the existing folks and move on.
And one other comment when I think of that, because the food truck is back on the weekends out by Casa Ramos in that parking lot. So we continue to have out of area food trucks coming in that we don't even know if they have a health permit from Glenn County. And in the research, if they've got a health permit in Yolo County from Woodland, that means nothing in Glenn County. So it's really a health and safety issue where we don't know where these people are preparing their food. We don't know the sanitary conditions of their mobile food trucks, but we really have no teeth because we have zero code on food trucks. So if someone shows in from out of the area, it's like they're there.
Sales tax reporting.
Pardon?
Lack of sales tax reporting.
Yeah. I mean, on and on.
Councilmember Thomas, anything to add?
Well, it's a tough one for me. But the concept of having some teeth and stopping because we've had mobile trucks come into the city and do their business and leave. We had the one that was on Wood Street at Villa,
Oh, yeah, at the reclamation. Well,
at the Reclamation, yeah. And so I think I'm swaying the direction of going along with the moratorium for simply stopping the people coming into town and taking away from our existing businesses that are like legal, licensed, and properly serving it and are under the proper health and safety codes. And I think that would probably be logical. So I'm kind of swaying a little different.
Perfect. I would like to remind that this is questions for the department head at this moment before I open up to public comment. And then we do a discussion afterwards,
Oh.
according to my notes.
Oh,
Councilmember Hanson?
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have no questions, but I have a discussion. If you'd like to
Okay.
do that at the public hearing, I'd be more than happy to.
I'm just going off my cheat sheet over here, trying to make sure I follow the correct protocols, because sometimes I jump the gun and miss things. With that, we will open it up to public comment at 7:45. Seeing as there is no public comment, we will close public comment at 7:45. Sorry, now we can have a discussion. I didn't mean to be
Mayor, I mean, technically it's a public hearing, so it's your opening public hearing
hearing.
and then closing public hearing.
One word. Okay.
I would recommend just being
Okay.
specific.
We will open at 7:45 for public hearing.
There-
Seeing as there is no public comments during the public hearing, we will close public hearing at 7:45. Thank you. Now, pleasure to the council for comments.
There you go.
Oh, yeah, thanks, Mayor.
Councilmember Hanson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I won't, repeat all the comments I made last time. I just remain steadfastly opposed to a moratorium in any business. I think it sends the wrong message. Our municipal code is in the process of being updated, as we know. It will be updated in the relatively near future. Although I appreciate the comments in reference to the squatters, the unlawful food trucks that do enter the city limits. And recently I reported 2 of those at the beverage outlet, the former Circle K, and also the extreme north parking lot there near the Casa Ramos property line, where the Golden Pheasant used to sit. I reported that to city. And but a moratorium is not going to have any effect on the squatters. They're operating unlawfully. They don't care. We have a moratorium. So what? What's that mean? That doesn't mean anything. They're still operating unlawfully. Has no bearing on any business that's unlawful coming in the city limits. The moratorium has no bearing on those whatsoever. I'm just opposed to moratorium in any business, period. The Muni Code will be updated. It is a living document. The Muni Code is not going to be able to answer every question there is anyway. And it never will. It's a living document, as we know. But I'm just opposed to it. It's the wrong message to send. I'm in absolute opposition to this matter, period. That's all I had, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Would any other council members like to add?
I have a question brought up about that. So if we have this moratorium in place, can we present it to the sheriff and say, there's somebody that's not licensed, they can shut them down?
I mean, I think technically could, but I don't know that they would have the bandwidth to do it.
It'd be more of a code enforcement
Yeah,
issue
I think so.
than
too.
having law enforcement come in and cite. But
So
I
if
mean-
they set up at shop at 5 o'clock on Friday and they're all through
The weekend.
Sunday night, and they're just gonna run away with it anyway. And there's nothing we can do about it because we have no,
Short of
Look.
hiring code enforcement over the weekend at time and a half or something. No, you're right. There's not really anything.
this is a situation where if we had a police department, the sheriff, we would have a police department that could do that for us.
you could if we had a,
Certainly, yes.
They could be our code enforcement.
yeah.
And the
And
sheriff can't do that for us.
is your, well, I have not had a chance to review your agreement with the county for what services the sheriff is providing. If that includes potential code enforcement, then yes.
Pretty sure it does not.
Then, it is something to perhaps broach with the sheriff if this becomes an issue. If there's an amendment to the agreement to give them the bandwidth or the authority, let alone whether or not they have the bandwidth.
Which is coming soon.
Comes up is the sheriff will support, like when I do code enforcement, if I know that the person's been hostile or things like that, they'll support the code enforcement action by being there with a badge and a gun and keeping us safe. But they more or less are focused on penal code versus municipal code.
Right.
If that makes sense.
I'm just thinking it's a discussion we can have even outside the moratorium. I mean, our code, if they're not licensed, they're not permitted, and maybe a strategy is 1 week out of a month that we have a code enforcement person work a Saturday or Sunday, and just check things for a couple hours. Or we deputize some of us.
Well, and that brings a question up. Is the fire department allowed to enforce municipal code?
So technically, yes. However, I wouldn't send the engine to go do that. If I'm around on the weekend and you see it, call me. And if I can come in, I'll come in and go talk to them in the short term. I can do that, but I wouldn't send the engine. The captains technically can enforce the municipal code as an agent of the city, but I wouldn't have them go do that.
And they'll want to go in a fire truck because if they get a call, right? So that won't be, that's an expensive code
Those guys
enforcement.
are probably going to be trying to buy the tacos.
I was thinking Hicks would totally be all over the food.
Just go
Any
turn the
other
hose on.
So
it
you're
there,
saying you want me
Nate.
to do undercover stings at the taco stands?
You have to
You'll
try all
need
the food.
you'll need
first.
expense account.
Yeah.
Need petty cash for sure.
No, this is a tough one. I'm very for a free market and allowing, people to have the same opportunity as everyone else. And so closing that off is a hard thing. However, I do understand especially the oversaturation. Maybe it is something that we need to look at a lot like we did our dispensaries. We have 2 licenses for dispensaries. Maybe we need to limit it to 3 or 4 for food trucks or mobile. I don't even know the correct terminology anymore. Mobile eateries, mobile food trucks. Okay.
This is my research.
Yeah. Perfect. And it's perfect right where it's at right now.
Yeah.
But with that being said, like I said, I am a big believer in a free market and everyone's able to try and run their own business and start their own business. So I will leave it up to my council members to make a decision.
You still have to vote.
No, I know. I'm requesting a what I'm trying to say here.
Motion.
Motion. Thank you. I want to say comment, but I know that wasn't right. Then I want to say hearing, and that wasn't right.
So I am going to move, and if I don't do this quite right, just tell me, that we adopt the ordinance. Do I have to read the title? That we adopt the ordinance of the Willow City Council authorizing a temporary moratorium on new mobile food truck applications in the city of Willows by title only and waive the second reading.
Second.
Okay, we have a first and a second. This will be a roll call vote.
Councilmember Busby,
Aye.
Councilmember Hanson,
Nay.
Councilmember Pride,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Thomas,
Aye.
Mayor Hudson.
Nay.
Motion passes 3-2.
You guys.
That's what I did last meeting, so I guess back at me.
Motion passed 3-2. Thank you. Moving on. Item 9, council correspondence. I do have a correspondent here. I received from the County of Glen Board of Supervisors, specifically Scott DeMoss, the County Administrative Officer. received correspondence regarding the county's interest to purchase 142 and 146 South Lassen Street here in Willows with the intentions to use to support transitional housing. With that, that's all I've received.
Very good.
Has anybody else received any correspondence that I don't know of? Okay.
No.
Next up will be city council comments and reports.
Does anybody up here have my library metric sheet?
So I ended up with it.
She had that well buried, by the way. She was keeping that.
We had a library board meeting library board meeting on Thursday. There was a bit of discussion about the city of Orleans vote to recall our current library director to be full-time in Orland. And what the process is going to be toward going out and hiring a new person to be in charge of our awesome library. So that is in flight. We're going to be working with the library board on doing that. The new children's librarian has been hired, and vibes are good. Vibes are good. Some purchases are going to be made to replace some kind of consumable stuff, the rugs, some chairs, all that kind of fun stuff. So far, annual totals, we have about 4,900 total books in circulation and about 3,500 door count. And that is the library report.
Thank you. Councilmember Hanson.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, two items. I was pleased to attend the new Butte City Bridge ribbon cutting ceremony on June 3rd. Best kept secret in Glenn County. It was not publicized very well at all by Caltrans. The only reason I knew about it was because our Caltrans rep reminded me at Dawson Stroud reminded me at a Glenn County Transportation Commission meeting about it. So there were, my count, six citizens of Glenn County there. There were probably 30 or 35 Caltrans employees there and a handful of dignitaries. One Colusa County supervisor, which I have a great relationship. Colusa County supervisor spoke. The bridge is in Glenn County. But anyway, that was a day of a county supervisors board meeting. There were no supervisors there. They were all attending the board meeting. And anyway, so I have a photo op to prove that myself and four of my friends were there. But anyway, but it was a great event. It was held underneath the new causeway. It's an awesome structure, nice and wide, for equipment movement, agricultural operations, and public transit. It's a beautiful structure with a lot of shoulder room. So, and the old bridge has been demolished. I've got a little bit of the concrete stashed as a memento, as many of us did. But anyway, so I did attend that. And secondly, on June 10th, we had our last monthly Glenn Groundwater Authority board meeting. It was an important meeting. They're all busy agendas, but budget approval for the 25-26 operational fiscal year was presented. A $1.872 million budget was approved. I have good news for my colleagues here in the City Council. The Groundwater Authority, we do our best to control costs, and we are holding the fees, the property-related fees, the acreage charge, the same as they were last year. For the fee rates will be at the 2024-2025 rate, which is 61 cents per acre for dry land classified parcels, $2.91 per acre for surface water user classified parcels, $6.83 per acre for groundwater use classified parcels, and this is an important one for my colleagues, $3.86 per acre for urban area classified parcels, which includes the City of Willows and the City of Orland. So that's my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Thomas.
No report.
Councilmember Pride.
Thank you. So Planning Commission, at their last meeting, they've been continuing to do some education, actually just walking through a lot of Title 18, prepping them for our July 10th joint Planning Commission City Council meeting. So that's been exciting to see. They're just going pretty much section by section. We do have an opening again on the planning commission. We've received 2 applications. The deadline is 2 p.m. tomorrow. We've gone ahead and scheduled 2 interviews. So we'll have an interview. Mayor Hudson and I will be doing interviews tomorrow afternoon. Today's Tuesday. Tomorrow's Wednesday.
Sorry, I'm still on travel brain.
Tomorrow afternoon. I'm looking at you going, wait a minute, I got the wrong day.
No, you're right. I was thinking it was Monday.
But it's not too late. If you're out there and you still want to get your application in, you have until 2 o'clock tomorrow to apply. And then I've been in conversation with people in the community in general. I think even during Measure I, it's like, how do we get the word out to community members, right? About what's going on. We have a newsletter and we have Facebook and, all these things. Well, I had a citizen just sent me a text yesterday and she said, hey, we have things called the red alert system, for emergencies where people can opt in and they get a text message. And she just, she said, throw it out there. Is there a system out there where people can opt in to get a text message? So when we have weed abatements coming, people can get a text message and then they can opt out if they don't want to get that. And I thought a lot of those systems are very emergency oriented, but I thought that would be a great way. You communicate about here's the phone number, you sign up, and then the city can just do a blast to people's phones.
I got it for a survey on my enterprise car.
So I just thought I'd throw that out there. If maybe we can get a little time and do a little bit of research on something like that.
We will check that out.
So I'm going to say thank you, Adele, for the idea. That's all I have.
Perfect. That's a great idea. I mean, you get them all the time for surveys or, like my rental car or whatever,
Yeah,
Hey,
they're usually
this?
charged per text. We use them a bunch and
mhm.
they're not bad.
But it's like a couple cents though, isn't it? Like,
Yeah.
I have nothing to report. So with that, I will pass it over to the city manager for her report.
I do not have a report except that the council member Pride reminded me of something. I just wanted to mention that we are working with Harrison Associates, who will be leading the July 10th joint meeting to get some sort of information to the council in advance of that. I know that that was Councilmember Pride in particular really wanted to have something to look at, to think about in advance of what kinds of things will be discussed, sort of high level policy direction that we'll be looking from the council. So you have a chance to think about it in advance. So we are shooting to get that to you next week. That was the date. Yeah. So
Perfect.
stay tuned. There's
All
a
right.
little staff report.
Ton of information there. So it's kind of going to be a big.
And since closed session was at the beginning of the meeting, that will adjourn our meeting at 8:01. Everyone have a good night.
Still daylight.
Yeah, good. Get some work done.